Caroline Darney for the win at CW Darney on Twitter. Is not only an outstanding reporter on ACC matters, she just so happens to be maybe the most level-headed Virginia fan I know.
Wow.
And she joins us. Look, that's not exactly a compliment, just so you know.
Well, I'll take that every day of the week. I appreciate that. Those two statements rarely go together.
See, that's why. It's a low bar.
Oh, it's a huge compliment. Huge compliment.
So the reason why we're talking with Caroline Darney, because over the weekend, so some people might have escaped them with everything else that was going on. We had a Super Bowl that we're all focused on completely. LeBron James broke a record. Kevin Durant got traded. All of that. Shouts to the NBA, by the way, for taking the Super Bowl off the sports minds for about 3 days. But Duke and Virginia ended didn't end, but at the end of regulation, somewhat controversial occurrence where a foul was called. Where it probably was a foul on Reese Beekman, but I think they called it on somebody else. And Kyle Filipowski probably should have, if they called a foul, should have been at the free throw line. Wasn't. They took the foul off the board. Virginia won in overtime, and I had zero problem if they don't call the foul, because we've seen that not called before. And Virginia, as good as they are, hey, look, Duke played well. Take that and go home. That's fine. No problem. But the way it played out was a problem. So, Caroline Darney, if they call the foul, should Kyle Filipowski have been shooting free throws?
So this is a complicated question. They called the foul, as you mentioned, on Ryan Dunn. So this is the thing. There's so many pieces, and there were so many mistakes made and I'm not even going to say by the players. This is mistakes made by the referees and then later, I think, ACC officials. And by that, I mean, the biggest mistake was blowing the whistle in the first place, because I agree with you. I looked at stat broadcast today. I think it was for about the last 4.5 minutes of that game. Right. The refs did not call a single foul. And if you remember, that game was tight down the stretch. Obviously, if it's tied at, the buzzer going off. The only foul that they called was one that Virginia gave by Reese Beekman with 10 seconds left or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of contact in the paint that was not being called throughout the last few minutes of the game, which fine. It is what it is. A lot of the fans across the ACC have asked for this season and seasons before is consistency. And so if you're not making those calls, then don't decide to make it. I mean, you can make the argument for the Super Bowl last night, right? So if you're not calling that hold for the other 3 quarters, do not call it with a minute and a half left. And so
you and I don't agree as much as you think we do, but that's fine. Continue.
This is just how I'm looking at it. Is the first mistake I think they made was blowing the whistle, because I think it was a close play that was either way. And so if they did not blow the whistle, we do not have this drama.
No, not at all.
The second biggest mistake was issuing the statement, in my opinion, because the statement made everything worse. Because in the statement, they say that the foul was assessed on Ryan Dunn. Right. So you're asking, if it was a foul, should he have shot free throws? Well, then you get into the technicality of, I spent an hour this morning scouring the rule book looking for information on blocks. Right. Because they've mentioned the path of the ball or the flight of the ball, etc.
The ball's still in flight. The ball. In other words, if they get the shot off before the buzzer, which Filipowski clearly does, and there is a foul in any part of that sequence, then it's a foul.
Unless, in my opinion, and this is what I couldn't find any clarification on, the path of the ball is disrupted by a block, which is what the non-call on Reese Beekman would imply. So this is where things get dicey, right? So if you're saying that Reese Beekman at 6'3", he did go straight up. Look, we can have conversations all day long as to whether or not he got ball first then hand, which is allowed for the rules, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But the ref determined in that moment the foul was not on Reese Beekman. Reese Beekman affected the flight of the ball. So at that point, is it still the shot? This is where things like I said, get hairy, because, again, I can't find anything in there about blocks or blocking, and I'm sure it's hard to search because blocks comes up with block charge, and you don't want any of that drama.
No, we don't.
Ugh.
Exactly.
All this is to say, if they decide that it's on Dunn, there is very little, if any, evidence that Dunn fouled him. I think that is the egregious part. So in retrospect, what the statement does is say, oh, it should have been a foul on Dunn and Filipowski should have shot 2 free throws. That's worse, I think, as an outcome.
Way worse.
Because then they're going to issue a statement to Virginia saying, oh, Dunn didn't actually commit a foul, but we put this guy on the free throw line. No, they're not going to do that. So the end result is not a loss. They didn't get handed a loss. That's my biggest beef with this whole thing, I think, is the people saying, like, Duke got handed a loss by the ref. No, they went to overtime.
All right, so here's where you and I are going to part agreement. One, I don't think it matters what they have called before. Same, I talked about this already in the football game. I don't think it matters what they have called or not called before. If the referees see a foul and they call a foul, then that's a foul, and I have no problem with it.
I agree that should not be something that's like, in this moment, you can't call that.
Right.
Like that kind of thing. Like, because people will say, like, oh, I bet you thought it was a foul when Kyle Guy got hit. Yeah, it was a foul when Kyle Guy got hit against Auburn. Like, you call that in that situation because it's a clear and obvious foul. That's where I think the Reese going straight up and I also think the discussions may be a little bit different if, like, this is the equivalent of Jeremy Roach blocking Caden Shedrick. Like, I feel like that's lost in this is the athleticism of the play that Reese Beekman made is
It's a great play. It's a great play. And again, I would have been okay if they don't make the call.
Yeah,
my whole point is this, and this is what I said on Twitter, and I didn't you and I took our conversation about this offline, so as it was just you and I and not everybody in the world.
Right.
I didn't want Elon Musk kicking me off Twitter because I didn't like the way this was adjudicated, and frankly, I didn't care. And at the beginning, I said if they call nothing, I'm okay with it, but they didn't. I have 2 points about this. The first is they call the incorrect player for a foul often. I'm not saying it happens every game, but they get that wrong enough to where it's not out of the realm of possibility that with 2 guys defending on the play, they got the wrong guy for the foul in their minds.
How do they not fix that in the statement, though?
That's the ACC's problem. It's the ACC statement that was bad, and I don't know why. Because maybe they didn't look at the video.
That exacerbates the problem.
No, there's no question about that. Let me just finish this real quick. Because the real problem is this: that once they assess a foul, if the shot would have been good had it gone, then the foul is the foul, and it doesn't really matter whether that foul occurred after the light went on or not. If they decide to assess a foul.
I agree, because I think this is where it comes in with the whole who it was on and the fact that it was the flight of the ball. Reese blocked it. Like, that is why that shot went so wild, because Reese blocked it. Like, whether or not you think he got armed first or all these other things, Reese touched the ball and impacted the flight of the ball.
No question. I don't think any of that matters, to be honest.
But I think if any other play is going on, right? So if someone is, blocking the ball, and that play is not determined to be a foul, but they land and then they say that it's a foul or whatever, then that's not that's where I think it gets dicey, and that's where it's after the horn went off, is what they were saying. That was and the other part that really made things bad was the in-arena announcer said they determined there was no foul. Well, that's not allowed. They determined, that the foul was after the shot process of Reese versus Filipowski.
Well, maybe that's semantics because if if it happens after.
It absolutely is. And I think my guess is it was probably something similar to, and I'm not defending this for people who might want to, I've been called a nitwit and an idiot and whatever else. I'm just saying.
Somebody called you a nitwit?
Right? In 2023.
Like a nitwit? How come nincompoop didn't come up?
Like,
ignoramus?
I think it's similar to a play in which, rather than calling like an over the back and giving a player a foul on a rebound attempt, they just give the ball to the team it was clearly off on.
Yeah.
And so the refs probably were like, ugh, we messed this up big time. We can't really call inadvertent whistle. We can't, and they decided that, this was the play. This play of Reese versus Filipowski ended. And now it's after the buzzer when Ryan Dunn gets involved, and therefore it's not a foul because or the foul occurred after. Not that the foul was waved off. They're saying, sure, the foul happened and whatever. Then the ACC gets involved and adds the flight of the ball and the other stuff. And
that statement by the ACC was bad. I agree. What we need, legitimately, is what the NFL provided last night after the football game, where they have a pool reporter. She asked Carl Cheffers the question, and he goes, "No, it was a jersey pull right off the line of scrimmage. It impeded the pass route. End of discussion." He said there was no debate because we saw the play. We saw the penalty right off the play. So there was no debate. In this, it would be great if, I don't know who the crew chief was. I know our friend Tim Clockerty. He was one of the officials on the play. My issue was that it didn't appear that any of the three officials really knew the rule, which was probably...
or clearly the rules are so convoluted that there's an issue there. Because, I went through the whole thing. And so what really, really stinks to me in this whole situation is, one, that was a really, really fun game to watch, to cover, to be in the arena for. And now this is all that's going to talk about. And I feel bad. Honestly,
I don't think anybody's talking about it anymore. I really don't.
The tough ending to not even
here.
John asked about it this morning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he was. Yeah, but
I mean, the one thing that I do think that why the ACC may have made a statement is this is now two late game situations that would be extraordinarily frustrating for you if you're a Duke fan or Kyle Filipowski specifically, and both in the state of Virginia. I don't really think there's a Virginia
Oh, that's right. A similar thing happened up at Virginia Tech.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think part of this was the ACC, and I mean, there's just been so much more referee talk. No one wants to talk about the refs.
That's why we should never have press conferences involving referees, ever, 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 ever.
And so it's the whole thing. The coaches can't say anything or else they get fined.
See, that's dumb too. The coaches should be allowed to say something.
Yeah, so the whole thing. It's a big mess. I feel, and here's the big thing, right? Duke could have turned it over last. Virginia could have made more free throws.
22 turnovers. That's why Duke lost. You can't turn it over. Gosh, when you play Virginia, there's only like 30 possessions. How do you turn it over 22 times?
Well, and you can't put yourself in the position where you go way under your average from the free throw line.
Right.
They missed 9 free throws in regulation. Like, this is a blowout. If
Right. Is Beekman going to stay healthy?
Is Beekman?
Yeah.
Oh God, he better.
Yeah.
He looks so much. He's finally back to that. Oh, man, he is so athletic.
He's a heck of a player.
You went up and met him in there. Like that's the conversation. There were so many great plays in that game. You saw so many. There was, I think it was a drive by Proctor in overtime where he just kind of dribbled around and you're like, oh, he's going to lose it, and then had this beautiful hook shot. You had Granson tying it. Armand going off. It was just such a great, fun game, and hopefully, eventually people will get out of the mentions of people who cover Virginia or the Virginia official accounts and stop saying, you stole the game.
No, nobody stole anything. Again, would have been fine if they just, we're going overtime, and then Virginia blew Duke's doors off, and that's what happens. Duke's starting a whole bunch of kids in diapers, and Virginia's got a bunch of older guys, which is fine. Kihei Clark has been there. This is his 8th year?
Yeah, he played with Ralph Sampson.
Caroline Darney for the win at CW Darney on Twitter. Again, the most level-headed Virginia fan I know, which is a short list. I appreciate your time. Be well.
It's fun.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right, see ya.
Thanks. Caroline Darney. Here's the thing. What happened at the end of the game is okay. It's all right. Do I think it was a foul on Beekman? Yeah. They called it on the wrong guy. That's a problem. But, again, the problem was the ACC putting out a statement, agreeing with a foul on somebody who did not commit a foul. That's, the only explanation for that is it's pretty clear that nobody watched the video of the play.
Exactly.